up our work. So Ian, Jackie, Luke, again, Alex, Max, Abigail, Jackie, Ian's not here. Luke's not here, Abigail, okay, oh, and Jack. And Jack. It's all happening, people. It's getting done. Yay, 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 yay. There you go. All right, I'll keep these over here. Was everybody able to grab a new schedule? All right, as we learned so wonderfully at the last minutes on Thursday, I'm missing a lot of dates in the schedule. And who would have guessed? So I went back through the schedule and I took a look at it. And I want us to simply take a look at some of the things that are coming up. Now this is only up through spring break still. And nothing has changed about what you're turning in. And nothing has changed on the dates that you're turning them in, except for the informative speech. And what you'll see here is that we had, before, I had left out 2 dates, so I didn't think that you had that much time for your informative speech. But in fact, we do have a good amount of time. Next Thursday, I'm going to check in with all of you, and I'm going to ask you to take a vote on whether or not you would like to do your speeches on March 17th and 19th, or March 24th and 26th. The 17th and 19th is the week after spring break. I have not had good success with individuals who will do spring break and then come back and then go into their speech. Oftentimes that Tuesday person is not as well prepared. But I do want to make sure that, or make you all aware that we have a good 2.5 weeks of work still to do and prepare for this speech. And I don't want you to fall too behind necessarily with persuasion if we get too involved in that. So what I'm saying here is keep this in mind for the next week and a half. On next Thursday, we'll take a vote. We'll see where you're at. If you would like to have it done right after spring break, or if you wanted to wait a week, and we'll fill in some time. But I think that you are more than likely going to be prepared and ready to go. So keep this as we go forward. Keep in mind that we talked about that using outside sources, and what I've made that is simply a reading about visual aids now, a simple reading about what types of visual aids to use. What we'll do when we come in on next Tuesday, we'll go over how to use the technology in class and have you all get up and practice and play with that. So go through this. Let me know if you have any other questions as we go forward. But if you'll note, on Tuesday we do have an assignment due. It is the outlining skeleton, and that outlining is what we are going to be going over today. Yay! So before we jump in, any last minute thoughts about scheduling, what's going on with your speech, what's due coming up? No? Yeah.
What did those extra days, like the days you forgot, what did they turn into?
Oh, they got moved around. They just moved into, I just moved everything up. Same thing. Just moved it up.
On Brightspace, the outlining assignment, the actual assignment, do we have to have our whole thing outlined as in the examples that we read by the 25th, or what is it?
I mean, oh yeah, I'm going to go over the outline today. You mean the main point outline?
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
I saw there was
Or the
3 things for us to read and then 2 assignments, and I looked at there was an example outline and then a sample outline, and which one or what are we going to have to complete for the outline assignment due on the 25th, and then there's something on the 27th too, so I didn't understand how they were different.
Oh, it didn't say that in the directions?
Oh, it probably did. I
Oh, okay.
didn't understand.
I was like, oh, you're really not explaining anything.
So,
The 27th, it's a skeleton. You're
Yeah.
just going to write out sentences, and then the one on the 29th. That's where I want you to do one main point. So
Okay.
you'll see, I'll go over today.
Yeah.
I have a handout for the assignment on the 25th, and then we'll talk about what that will look like for the.
So we don't have to have the full completed, like, main point, line about it, 1, 2, mine. No? Okay, cool, so I got confused now. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, we'll go over how to do the regular skeleton today and the outline in detail. Good, good. Any other thoughts or questions or outstanding ideas about the class or anything? All right, I think that you all are great, even all 9 of you. 4, 6, 11 of you. That was the fast one. 11. So many people are sick.
Yeah.
Are people on your dorms and everything sick too? Make sure that you all are trying to stay healthy. It's so hard.
I'm a healthy boy.
Are ya? All right. Keep, washing your hands and getting some sleep and maybe exercise and all those things they tell you to do. Take a vitamin. Okay. I'm going to have all of you turn in your packet to page 21. So turn to page 21. We're going to be going over outlining, and that is on the right-hand side of your handouts. Yep. Today is one of those days that I ask you to suspend your judgment as we go into the part of outlining. I asked you this at the beginning of the semester, saying that we will be going over things that you may assume that you already know. And so some people end up just zoning out and tuning out for outlining and assuming they'll do it in their own way. Remember, outlining for public speaking has a specific standard and style that goes with it. And although it may seem like, oh my goodness, we're learning all these processes, I promise it has a purpose to it, but also it has a required standard, and we're going to adhere to that standard simply for the purpose of this class. You are more than welcome to move around those outlines as you go forward. But we're going to learn this pattern today. So if you have any questions, let me know, but don't fall back on the same standard of outlining that you've done before in the past, as this criteria is much different. Also, take it with some kind of a grain of salt. I said this in my last class because I was having some issues in my last class of individuals, there was a lot of side conversations about the class or ease of the class and ease of specific parts, and some individuals don't have ease with the class. And there were other individuals in the class who were not having as easy of a time, and so they reached out to me and contacted me because that kind of conversation doesn't do much for the integrity of the class. It doesn't make them feel good about their speaking style as well, or about what the energy and the effort that they're putting in, and then potentially like if they're having a challenge or having difficulty doing something. So simply keep those ideas. If this is coming super easy to you, and I know that this is maybe just a hoop to jump through, let it be. But if there is something that is becoming overly easy, I'm more than welcome to add something to your assignments to help you out, to help your growth go beyond what you already know. But otherwise, we'll simply support our friends and keep that in mind as we go forward. So in this class, you are going to be required to outline. You're not going to be writing a paper for your speech. Instead, you're going to be writing an outline. And what that requires you to do is write 2 different types of outlines. The first outline that you're going to be writing is called a preparation outline. That's the outline that you turn into me. So if you see that at the top, there's going to be a lot of criteria to go into the preparation outline. But you're also required to bring in a speaker's outline. And each of you know that that speaker's outline is the one that you use while you're giving your speech. I will look at it once at the beginning of class, but after that it is yours to make however you would want to. And it is not graded. But the preparation outline is now going to be graded. This preparation outline is worth 50 points of your grade. And it's really a lot about the formatting, the indentation, the supporting of the ideas, and the ultimate framework of the outline is what we're looking at in terms of grading. Also in terms of citing sources and including that works cited page. So today, my plan here with all of you is to go over the structure and the specific idiosyncrasies that are important to an outline for speaking. And then what we'll do is we'll do a sample one together. And then I have a little activity for you to do to practice. And then we'll go home. Sound good? And in the midst of that all, when we get into a specific part, I'm going to go over the outlining assignment for homework too. Okay, cool. Yay! All right, y'all. Let's get into it then. I hate how it does that because it's still going, but it doesn't show me. Okay. Who's playing on campus?
Who's what?
There's a band, eh? Loading in. I mean, they were loading in when I drove in today.
I'm not sure.
Anyone?
I know that there's like Troy Boy or something.
Oh, tomorrow.
Yeah, so I
Going
think
to that?
they're setting up for that maybe.
Oh, maybe some sound check for the Troy Boy.
Maybe.
Who's Troy Boy?
No.
Some EDM artist.
He EDM fans.
What did you say?
Yeah.
Huge EDM fan.
It's good to know.
I love all kinds of music.
But that was your jam.
I mean, like indie rock, reggae, EDM. I just hate country. But I'll listen to anything.
Me too. I mean, I'll listen to it if it's on, but it's like, I would never choose it. If it's at my parents' house, I don't have a choice. But I don't like the country either. Not a fan. I would never put it on.
Me neither.
One year at Coachella, though, somebody told us to go and see Chris Stapleton when he was there. This was probably, I think, years. And I walked in that tent and somebody was like, no, it's country. But I was like, all right, well, let's see it. And I like started crying immediately. I was like, what is happening? He's so magical. He is the one person that I will, in fact, see.
At school you went to Coachella.
Oh, yeah, we used to go to Coachella all the time. I went last year. Right? Yeah. Beyonce? Is that 2 years ago?
I never been.
I feel like she goes a lot.
Last year. It was a big one. The one that they did the documentary on?
I thought it was 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. So that was last time. We love going to festivals. So. Going to Bottle Rock this year.
Just go to Lollapalooza.
All right, I did when in '93
Ow.
and '94. Just crazy. Too 93 and '94. All right, we can talk about this forever. Let's talk about outlining though for a second. The only way that we can start though is by switching back to let's turn it back to page 18 first. Because if we're going to set up our outline, and this is a preparation outline, the one that you were turning into me, the one that you were formally writing, it's going to need to be written in a formal manner. And that means that we're going to utilize our MLA or APA style of writing. Did anybody decide that they wanted to do the APA or anything? Everybody's in the
It said on the assignment thing that we should do APA.
You can
Does it
do
not
it.
matter?
No, it doesn't matter. Absolutely. This class usually is an MLA style, but I'm versed in APA, so I can do whichever one you want. It just depends on whatever your major is. So keep that. What's your major?
I didn't know what either.
Go
was,
MLA.
so.
Go MLA. So the Modern Language Association has established a standard for us to be able to communicate with each other. Basically, they give you these writing standards so that when you read one person's piece of work, and then there's another individual who's writing another, you're able to follow along. You understand the structure, you understand the standard, especially when it comes to research. It's like, oh, findings, and now here's the future and whatever. It's always labeled in the same way. And then particularly it matters for the purpose of citing our sources and giving honor to those individuals of whom potentially wrote other words that are not ours. But the Modern Language Association is, in my opinion, exponentially easier than APA, and it doesn't have nearly as many rules and regulations. On page 18, on page 18, you are going to see two sides. It's for formatting general guidelines and formatting the first page of your paper. There are some rules on here that will not apply because this is talking about a paper versus an outline. But the good news is that MLA does not have a title page, regardless of what you're writing or even any type of like this big, when we get into like other different types of research papers. But you will need to use your first page as your title. Every single paper that you write from now on in college and in this class should follow this MLA guideline and criteria. So let's look really quickly. Type your work. Everything should be typed. And it should be printed out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's not just for my class, it's for everyone. Do not use any interesting font other than ones that are legible. Times New Roman, Courier, Arial, those are suffice. And it is always a 12-inch font with 1-inch margins. So does everybody know that criteria so far? Is that clear? Okay, awesome. The other thing that you're going to want to know is that on MLA, we create headers. Is everybody familiar with how to create a header in this class? Okay. A header, and that's okay, I'm going to show you. A header is something that, and you know what I'll do? I'll simply do this on the, or on a thing rather than writing it for you. All right, team. So here's how do you have a Word document? Did everybody work in some kind of processing or Word? Okay, cool. So the first thing that you are going to do is you are going to put and here's the most important thing. You are going to set your spacing on this page to be single spaced. What, Amanda? MLA calls for double. I know. But by the way that we format, you're going to see it's going to be so much easier for you to double space. So to single space. So set it as single spacing. Then we need to write our title. So what information goes in the title? The first thing is going to be your name. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what are we going to put?
Your last name.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. So your name,
Professor's name.
and then my name, right? Or whoever it is. And you're going to want to write professory. You're going to want to write that out in full. And then what do we do?
Class.
Yeah, that's right, everybody. Then it's your class name, and you write out your class name in full. So you're going to write it out as Rhetorical Arts, not RHET 1000. Okay? And then the last thing is the date. So, in the United States, we write it with the month, date, and then the year. But, the rest of the world, like the metric system, puts what first? And including an MLA.
The day.
It's the day, absolutely. So it's going to be the 20th of Feb.
But so you write it out, you don't do numbers as well.
Correct. So it will be in this order.
Do you do the day that's due or just when you do it?
Excellent question. Write it for the day you turn it in.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, yay, does this make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So this is the criteria you're always going to do. This, in fact, will be double spaced. So your heading, your name, and all that is double spaced. But let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a header. But I don't really like to do it with an insert header. I'm going to insert, and instead of doing like header or footer, I like to simply add my page number. It's exponentially easier. So I'm going to say add page number, and we always put it at the bottom of the page, and it's your header's at the top of the page, and it is right aligned. So if you wanted to do something here, you could very much do it. And all I do is I write my name right in front of it. And I hit enter. Oops. Of course. Wait.
Do a backspace on the one.
Well, we all get it, right? So this will go back over here and do that. Looks like it's on there. Okay. And then what you'll see is it will appear on every paper or every page from there on out. It will just automatically do it, and it will page number it for you. So did that make sense? Insert page number and then just put your last name in front of it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yay. Is this clear to y'all so far? So good? I'm so proud. All right, so everything that you write from now on will have this same pattern. Let's see, here's the important thing that oftentimes people will say with MLA. If you have endnotes, include them on a separate page before your works cited page. Why would you not have endnotes in a speech?
Say, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that you're on the right track there. I mean, one, the audience is not going to have your paper, so it's not like they can refer to what you're saying. If it's an end note, that means it's like a second thought or something in support. If it needed to be stated, it should be stated out loud. If not, it seems like it's something that's maybe extra or idealized that could be put somewhere else in the speech, and so simply avoid anything like an end note for there. I am going to also then show you how we go to the next steps. The one thing that you are going to need to give space to here, it's a double space. And what we do is we put and center a speech title. I'm going to just put something here that says speech title. But what we should note is that the speech title, my caps locked. Oh my. It's gonna go like that. The speech title is not bolded, it's not capitalized, it's not underlined, it's not italicized. It's in the same exact font and the same exact structure as any other regular term. Okay, so don't do anything else with your title, except come up with something creative, not speech or informative speech, but something that relates to your speech, not speech about, like, right? You don't want to say that, but instead, you know, I have a dream. That one's already taken. Or like, yes, we can. That one's taken too. But something to the extent where it will become a catchy title, something fun for you to do. And that is really, when it comes to the structures, where we need to go. But the next thing that we need to do is start adding in our content. So let's go back and cruise on over to outlining on page 21.
I'm gonna close the window.
I'm okay. Are you okay?
Yeah.
I think it's soothing.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if it was like really loud lyrics, then
Yeah,
maybe it would be
that's fair.
distractive, but I feel good.
Okay, tell me if you want to close.
Yeah.
All right, you all tell me too. I already know this, so I can totally help you.
So,
It's right here, or here, or here, somewhere. All the above. Let's start with it. All right, team. If we're looking at there's two different things here. And if you're seeing, we have something called the preparation outline and the speaker's outline. So let me simply make a quick definition for you all, and then we'll come back to that fun. The preparation outline, by definition, these are also going out. Okay, the preparation outline. Preparation outline is everything a speaker intends to say in a speech. And in turn, we have a speaker's outline, the one that you use, and these are simply key words and phrases to help jog the speaker's memory. Anybody watch the debate last night?
Seen clips.
I haven't watched it yet. Didn't know if there was anything fun. I heard Elizabeth Warren was fun, but time will tell. Is that the clip you saw?
I saw a few. There was one where Warren destroyed Bloomberg.
Yeah, I heard that.
There were a bunch of them destroying Bloomberg.
Everybody's got to get on it.
And then there was one of Bloomberg destroying Sanders, like, right at the end, I think.
I'm excited.
I was
Pretty
too busy
interesting.
watching Trump and the billions thing that you showed us from that class. So I had it on repeat.
You did? Just billions and billions. There's your next song. There's your next EDM song. Just kidding. I don't think I would like it.
I'd be so dead.
So the preparation outline, everything the speaker intends to say in a speech. So the key word there is intend. So Abigail, you're up there and you drop 3 sentences. No, you will not fail. No big deal. That's what you intended to say, right? This is extemporaneous speaking. We have an idea in mind, and if the world was perfect, and if we had that perfection ideal in our head, or we knew that speech was going to go exactly as intended, then we'd say, yeah, this is everything you're going to say. The idea here is that this is what you intend to say. Our situations are constantly changing. Our audience will change, the environment will change. We don't know how much we're going to be able to get through or not get through, or what's going to happen. We may need to add in information, or timing gets lost, and we have to drop information. But ideally, this is what you intended to say had you been able to do the entirety of the speech. Do I want you to repeat it word for word? No. Do I want you to memorize it? No. Do I want you to read it? No. But hopefully your outline will give you some good ideas as to where you are going when it comes time for the speaker's outline. And having a great preparation of knowing where you want to go will only assist in this speaker's one. But an outline, what it does is it provides us with a visual framework of one's ideas. It is often said that, and we can think about, even if you want to think about it like a machine, your speech, we are oftentimes so concerned about things like the language or the content, or what are we going to say, or how am I going to find these examples, etc. And all of that is part of your process, but it only comes to fruition when the organization of that is intact. Think of it almost like a machine, if you will. A machine works because all of the parts are moving and working together when they are in the right place. If they're not in the right place, something is going to present a mishap. The product isn't going to get put out. The same thing here. You are going to have a very big machine that you're putting together, and the structure of that machine or organization is the thing that's going to make sure that all the other content, the language, the material, the support comes out the way that it should. So let's get into working on this preparation outline that will also serve as the base for your speaker's outline, hopefully, but also dive into this pattern of organization so we can start to understand a bit more where it goes. Like it says on that sheet, we are also going to need to have a general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis statement. You already have that because you have written it for your topic approval. But after your title, you will double space, and you are going to put that on your paper. I don't know what's that. That's really funny. Now, you do not need to put a pattern of organization because we don't need that for something like that. Was for me to know that you knew what you were doing. But after you put your general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis statement at the top, then you are going to go through and you're going to label the particular parts of your speech. This is asking you to label the introduction, the body, the transitions, and conclusion. So your introduction is going to come first, body, or transition, sorry. Or transition, body, conclusion. If you flip over to page 22, you are going to start to see a sample speech come to life. If you'll see at the top, they have their header, they have their title, they have their general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis statement. And then they have labeled their introduction, the body, and the conclusion. The important thing that you all are seeing here is that they have, I have no underlines, no bolds, no anything. There is no rule, really, on the introduction, body, conclusion, or any of that being bolded or underlined or anything. It is up to you. That's your own style. So if you want it bolded, underlined, you want a colon, you want something, that's fine. But only on those particular labels, if you will. For the body, you do not need to write body every single time you start a new main point. Simply one body will suffice. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. Let's flip it back over then. Go back to outlining on page 21. So the next thing that we are going to have on here is a specific pattern of symbolization and indentation. Get that pen again. Where? No. How is it possible? But you don't see it either, right?
No.
Like, no, Amanda, yeah, it's just out of thin air.
The one on the desk.
No, that was.
Purple, the one, right?
It was. Let's go with this new black one. All right, team, let's look. Let's talk about symbols. So what are symbols? Something that, there you go, something that represents something else. Did we talk about that symbolic representation in this class?
A little bit.
Talked about this being a symbol, maybe this being a symbol, this being a symbol, this being a symbol, and symbol. All together creates a symbol for something else, like an apple, obviously, or potentially a technology company. Symbols don't just exist in the realm of language or writing. Every particular culture has their own standard for communication. So this is our symbolic standard if we were speaking English and symbolically. But for some of us, we communicate maybe even better in music, if you will, right? And we have a symbol here. This is a symbol. This is a symbol. And then when we put it all together, it starts to create a particular message that communicates meaning and makes you probably feel something. Well, the same kind of symbolic expression takes place in the realm of public speaking. Then for speechwriters, we have our own symbolic way of representing ideas. And so when any other speechwriter looks at your paper or your speech and sees these particular symbols, it communicates to them that that means something else, or what it in fact means. So for us, our particular standard of symbolization does not often follow the same pattern that your word programs use. I know there are many different types of outlining sources, but our standard follows a particular symbolic organizational one. Making note on your word program, if you can take off your formatting, it's going to help you exponentially. Have any of you ever spent hours and hours trying to outline something, like tab, dang it, went too far, and it won't come back, and then you double space, and you're like, oh my gosh. I do not want any of you to be in that jam for too long. I mean, to show that if we went something, if I started here, potentially outline. Is it doing it? Okay, oftentimes, let's just say, let's try it over here. No. It starts. Huh.
You have to do a space after the period.
Ah, there she is! Oh, thank God. You know why? Smart girl in STEM. All right, here we go. So this little dialogue box will pop up. I'm sorry, she's a smart woman in STEM. To change the name, it changes a lot. We talk about that in my gender comp class. Does anybody know why it would be important for us to call her a woman instead of a girl? Yeah.
It's kind of undermining someone if you like don't give them the proper pronoun or like acknowledge their maturity.
Sure, acknowledge their maturity, absolutely. Oftentimes also this idea of like, I will say, like I'll call people out on it, like I'm going out on a date with a girl. And I'm like, I hope not. But it's also the idea that to call somebody a woman changes the way that you treat her exponentially. Because you would never, like, oh, the woman, like a girl, oh, she's just a girl, like that one can get thrown away. So oftentimes when it comes time for like behavior or actions toward women, if we're talking about like any violence or anything like that, oftentimes that word of girl and woman, changing that and getting people's language can make a shift. So put that in your but I oftentimes do it too, very socially. All right, these dialog boxes will pop up and you will get this idea and you can say, stop automatically creating a numbered list, y'all. Is that good? No, stop automatically creating a numbered list. You can also simply say, turn off auto formatting. You can Google how to do it, but if you spend more than 5 minutes worrying about your formatting, you come let me know. Is that good? All right, well, we don't want you to have to work on that. All right, so what kind of pattern of organization then do we use? Well, we are going to use and start on a process of starting with numbers, letters, numbers, letters, numbers, and letters to symbolize. For me, when somebody puts a dot or a square, I have no clue what that means. What does a dot mean? I don't know. And they're all on the same line, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense where an idea supports an idea or another one. So for us, we use a pattern of numbers and letters, and then a series of indentation, so that we start to acknowledge what ideas support the ones in front of it, and potentially what ideas maybe need more support. So we can start to see that along those lines. Let me put it into real terms, and then we'll put it into real terms. Where we are always going to start with our pattern of symbolization will be with our Roman numerals. Why? Because our Roman numerals represent our main points. And the bulk of our body are the main points. And so all of your main points will be identified by Roman numerals. Oh, why am I writing Roman numerals? This will be your main points, depending on how many you have. The main point can't sit there on its own, y'all. It's got to do something. It needs to explain something, right? It needs help. It needs support. So it calls in for backup. And so it brings in a new symbol to help support its idea and explain it a little bit more. And so what we have here, this is our main point. What we do is we have a new idea. Every single symbol, right, something else, for us, a new idea. If you jump down to to letter G on the outlining, for every sentence, there is a new symbol. Because a sentence is one idea. To have multiple sentences under a symbol doesn't work because that's 3 ideas in one. So we break down every idea into a new symbol, meaning every sentence is broken down. Once we've established our main point, we call in for the backup, and because we can't use a number, we need to differentiate, we start to use a letter. So the letters that we use, and we're going to indent under the first letter of the last sentence, and we're going to put capital A. All of our capital letters are going to explain our subpoints. Our subpoints, sub meaning below, submarine, subordinate, right? Subordinate. So subpoint. This subpoint's job is working to explain that's all working to explain what? Specific purpose, right? That's your central idea. What in the world are we doing? Oh, well, we're here to inform you about something, right? So everything is working to complete that purpose. But the subpoint has explained itself and we need more detail. We need more description. So it calls in backup. And now we have a new symbol. We are going to indent underneath the last letter of the last sentence. And we are now of a number, we have a letter, and now we are going to use a number again. Our standard numbers are going to be representing our sub-points. Sub meaning they fall 2 below the main point. But the sub-point's job is to describe the Absolutely, which is simply working to describe the, which is all working to describe the. Oh my gosh, guess who needs backup? The sub point. So the sub point calls in and it needs to an explanation, a description, maybe a definition or something. All right, quotation, testimony. So we're now going to bring in a new symbol. We've already used the uppercase, so we can no longer do that. So now it's going to be represented by our lowercases. So this is going to be our sub point, meaning it falls 3 below the main point. Working to support the sub point, we're just working to support the sub point. You get it, going along. Do we need backup? Yeah, we need backup again. Oh my gosh, y'all, this is a detailed speech. Who would have guessed? So now we call in for some more backup. And now the sub point needs explanation. So it takes a number again, but we already have a number, and we already have a number. What do these numbers look like? They are lowercase Roman numerals. There we go. And lowercase Roman numerals are simply lowercase. This is an uppercase I, this one is a lowercase I. Somebody said, hey, should we put a J? And I said, no, because it's not really an I, it's actually a 1, and then we have a 2. We have a 3 and a 4. Yeah? Okay, cool. So these are the ones that you would use for your sub to the 4th point, as we can call it. Past this, we can continue to go. We would go through like an AA, an A and B, but remember it is a 5-minute, 7-minute speech. I can always guide you through where you're going to go next. But this is where the pattern will typically go. Each idea is simply on a new line. It is indented so we know and we can see what idea or concept it supports, and it's indicated by a different letter or number to let us know what in fact it is supporting. Does the structure, at least, the idea of the indentation, and as well as these particular symbols, do they make sense to you? Okay, cool. Push forward then. I want, however, before we go in here, actually we can't push forward, I'm going to erase this. Let's jump down to E on your outlining guidelines and rules. It says, everything must be written in
Full sentences.
Yeah, full sentences, y'all. So what's a full sentence? And I know we don't really need to, but yeah, we do. Can't tell you how many times people are like, ooh, it's an outline. I don't necessarily need to write a full sentence. But what's a full sentence? Has a subject and a verb. Good, I'll give it to you. It also starts with a what? Give it on. Capital letter. Can't tell you how many people forget it. And then it ends with what? Get crazy.
Period.
Yeah,
or some sort of punctuation.
Some punctuation, a question mark,
Wow.
or
Exclamation mark.
get excited about it. You know I'd love it if you spoke with a hyperbole.
So I understand that each basically forming talking point whatever is a single sentence, right? So does a single sentence, is that you can't use like commas and ands and stuff like that? That would be a different thing, or would it still, since
It's a compound sentence.
Okay, so you could do compound sentences.
Oh, absolutely. Simply make sure that it's a full sentence and it's not 3 sentences. Because we don't want 3 sentences on one symbol. That would be 3 ideas in one. So 3 sentences, 3 periods. If that makes sense.
So
Commas are fine. It's not an ending punctuation. When the ending punctuation comes, that's when you start a new symbol. Yeah or no?
I just one more little technical thing.
Semicolon?
So with semicolons because
Same idea.
it's a relating.
Just
sentence.
do the related. Keep it all in one.
Okay.
Yeah. You, however, will know best. I get what you're saying. I had another student in my blog about that. If you have a semicolon, the related ideas, keep it in the same sentence and keep it in the same. You wouldn't put a period and start a new one. Like it's essentially all part of that same idea. If you were going to write it with the semicolon, it follows the same rule that it would stay on the same line. If you, however, think you need to break down that idea, do so. More than likely when we write with a semicolon as well, it's clear to the audience because they're able to see what you said before and link those two ideas together. Whereby if I was speaking out loud and I was making those two connections, whatever came after the semicolon, would it be better for me to say that in another full sentence so that they made sure they got what they were talking? Does that make sense? Something to that extent as well. All right, so everything must be written in a full sentence. Then you are going to double space between each symbol. So I know I was saying, Amanda, keep the formatting with single spaced because you are going to single space your sentences but double space between symbols. So if you flip back over to the sample outline, you'll see here on the second page that each symbol is single spaced, but there is double spacing in between the symbols. Does that make sense to y'all? So that's why I said keep it on a single space, because it is going to take so long for you to go back and then re-single space each point if you have to do so. And the last rule, back onto our outlining rule there, so double space between each symbol. For every sentence, there's a new symbol, which we talked about, and then, okay, yeah, we don't need to, so we've done those 3 things, so we're going to write in 3 sentences. All right, team, let's put this into real words, shall we? Okay, and when we put this into real words, I'm going to go around and I'm going to call you out in specific. At that point, you go ahead and let me know what you would say. Don't call out and help your other friends. Let's let them figure it out for themselves. I know you're going to be so excited to like scream out for outlining. Try to hold back. Are you ready? Okay. If I was to give the thesis statement, today I'm going to tell you all how to make a chocolate chip cookie. And to do so, I'm going to first gather the ingredients with you. Then I'm going to show you how to put those ingredients together into our cookie form. And finally, I'll give you some alternatives for allergies or other issues you may come across. What's my first main point?
Gathering ingredients.
Fantastic! So, I'm going to put here an A. No, why, Ed? What am I going to put there?
Roman numeral.
Roman numeral what?
I.
Yes, absolute. Holy moly, y'all. I have so many. All right, here we go. I need it like around my, maybe I need a,
Stack them
like a
facing
lantern.
down, so that the
I don't want these 3 at all. These are the ones that I want. I'll put those away right there. Okay, good. So I would just put something like ingredients. Ed?
What was the main point again?
Gathering ingredients.
No, because you're gathering them also, so.
Sure. I probably want to use a couple more words.
Yeah.
Maybe something like a full. There it is! All right, fantastic. So we're going to need a full sentence, remember? So remember, everybody wants to just write the words. We're going to be writing in full sentences. Now, oftentimes for your main point, let's think about your first speech, and if you were thinking about what that main point was. I bet you would go back and realize, oh my gosh, I didn't even really lay out my main point. Why? Because if you wanted to tell us your main point, what would be an example of a main point that you would give? So like if we know, and anybody can play around with the ingredients. Well, anybody can help.
so just something.
You've done it before, you've already written your main points.
Yeah.
Simply use some words and put that in a sentence.
Gather.
Yeah.
Ingredients are as follows.
Oh, ingredients needed are as follows. If that's how you would speak, then absolutely, you put that out. Ingredients needed are as follows. Fantastic. sometimes people make the mistake by saying, first, let's look at what ingredients are needed. And although it sounds like a great idea in a topic sentence, we also are missing something before we go into our main point. What is that?
The ingredient.
It starts with a tran, ends with a zishin, and it's called a?
Transition.
Oh my gosh, y'all! Okay, fantastic. So the transition is needed before each of your main points. I'm going to pass out this handout, which discusses a bit about the assignment for Tuesday. But what it really does,
Thank you.
you're welcome, which it really, really, really does, I'm going to pass this one back for Jack too. And then I'm going to have you skip the top part right now. But what I want you to do is go down to what to think about for this skeleton. So let's talk about this transition area before we get into it. It says write out your transition in full how you would say it, and then write out all your full main points in a full sentence that is asserting what the main point will be covering. Please note the sentence should not be the same as the transition. So what does that mean? That means our transition is going to tell us what the main point in general is going to be, and the Roman numeral 1 is going to describe specifically what that main point will cover. That's an easy way to distinguish between the two. So if we look at the rough example, the speech is talking about LMU's standards. This first one says, first, transition, I will describe the development of standards of accountability currently in place for you to understand how they impact students' success. That has a signpost, a main point, and a central idea for your specific purpose. Each of us in our transitions should include that in some capacity. First, second, third, to begin, finally, all those words that you use, and then include the signpost in main point and central idea in some way. Then it goes into its main points. Since its inception, LMU has had 3 different versions of the standards of accountability, each growing with the changing student population and conditions of the time. So the first main point indicates to us what its support is going to cover. For you all, as you go down and it says A, you will want to make sure that the main point is clear in what it's going to accomplish. And then I, what's it going to do? Start to think about your main points, sub-points. It would behoove each of you to think about your sub-points before, in fact, you write that main point statement. What do we know about our area that we're covering? What is the connection between these particular sub-points? Is it that maybe you are going to order them chronologically, right? Where it's like the first, the second, third. Potentially within your main point, some of us even talked about this at your meetings where we talked about organizing it topically, whereby let's say you have a particular standard or something, and you'll say, this is what the standard is and what it was intended to do. Then this is what the standard is actually doing. And now here's what the standard impact is on women, right? And so we know that I'm going to show you the process of how that works. Is it the chronological process? Is it the stepic? Is it unique topics? Is it enumerated, as we were saying? So for example, in this case, it says it had 3 different versions. So it's going to cover what do you think that standards of accountability is going to do. What that main point is going to have out or laid out is going to be those particular types or those particular standards. So start to think how you can best communicate that information through your subpoints, and that will help you to start potentially developing those main points. Statement. So if we wrote a transition like, first, let's look at the ingredients necessary to make and I'm gonna put chocolate chip cookie, even though it's not in full sentences and I didn't write it, but thank you.
So you're gonna wanna write all of your sentences how you would say them, so first person's fine.
100%. We want to write how we are speaking. Everybody, before you write your sentence, think, how would I say this out loud to a friend? How would I explain this to somebody that I was teaching? That is how you would want to do it. Because if we start to write in a form that is like our writing, and we start to speak with that same writing, the connection between the two is going to be awkward. It's also going to not allow us to speak extemporaneously, because when we use words that aren't comfortable with us, or we use a sentence structure that we never use in our everyday conversation, how do we expect for that to feel comfortable or normal up in front of an audience? So remember, you can still be professional. You can still be taken super seriously. You can have amazing credibility with an audience and have your own unique, fantastic, dynamic personality. It doesn't always have to be so serious or so stoic or so formal as you think a formal should be. So write it as you would say it. So our transition is there, and then our first main point then, Ed, could be, because we know we have ingredients, right? So what are ways that we can start to separate ingredients for all of you who are thinking about it? We can talk about how many ingredients there are. We can divide ingredients by color. We can invite it, right? If we think about how they do it on a Nestle Toll House bag, they do it by like chemistry components almost. Like these ones get mixed with this and this gets mixed with this, so that one comes together, it works perfectly. You can also do it like dry ingredients, wet ingredients, right? There's a lot of different ways to organize your ingredients, but being privy to the topic would be one thing, because I know eventually that the way that that's going to get mixed and put together is going to depend on the way that you order the ingredients. For the purpose of us, I'm not going to worry about it so much, but what I want each of you to note is that you will know personally how those main or those subpoints or ideas need to be structured in order for your audience to know your topic best. But like I was saying, if I know cookies, then I would do it by the ingredients that you do first, and then I do it by the ingredients that you slowly add as you mix in, right? But otherwise, let's just say that there's a number. Let's say that there's 4 ingredients to making a chocolate chip cookie. So what could you say? That would be a way that we could organize it. And don't worry, I'm going to pull it over to Charlie. I've already done so much today. Charlie, how would you say it?
What, 4 ingredients? Or
Yeah. Is it? You want to lay it out like that?
Alright, so you start with like the base that you would need. You said dry and wet ingredients, so you could do flour, milk.
Yes. Well, let's make our sentence though, because we have yet to establish our
Alright.
main point.
Alright.
And it must be different from this one. Let's look at the necessary ingredients to make a chocolate chip cookie. Now we can specify. I could even say something like specifically.
Yeah, specifically you will begin with 2 cups of flour or something. Or we'll begin with flour, milk, butter, and sugar.
Okay, we could totally do that. And then I could make flour, milk, butter, sugar. Or I could say specifically, you are going to need 4 ingredients.
Yeah.
Now I know that what's coming after that,
Expect 4 ingredients.
expect 4. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay, yay! Good, okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Specifically, and nobody should write with dashes. You will need, there we go, 4 ingredients. Awesome sauce. All right, what is one type of ingredient? Not the good stuff yet, Abigail. Give me a buffer ingredient.
Chocolate chips.
No, not the good stuff yet.
Oh, okay, flour.
Flour, great, easy enough, easy enough. Okay, so I am going to, Abigail, put a 1 here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have my Roman numeral.
Oh, wait, A.
Uh-huh. Okay, the A is going to mean this is my point, right? So I'm gonna put the A over here on this line.
Below the X.
And if it's not perfectly there, just kidding, just get it as close as you can, don't worry about it. A. Cool. Now what would you say in a full sentence? If you were leading your own cooking show, how would you say it?
The first ingredient you'll need is flour.
Yes, I love it. Okay, the first ingredient you will need is flour. Amazing. Cool. What's another ingredient?
No.
So.
Interestingly not, but we'll go with it. Let's pretend that we do. Let's pretend we're gonna make it with milk today. So,
Probably be dead.
I'm going to put a 1 here.
No, it's gonna be like the lowercase Roman numeral. I think.
Here.
Yeah. I believe
Okay.
so.
Now, this is a great question for all of you as you are writing. We don't have to necessarily guess. We just know that right now we're going to go on and we're going to talk about another ingredient.
Oh, another ingredient?
Well, that's why, yes, milk, right? So what would you use if it was another ingredient?
Would you use a bead?
Yeah! Why would I use a lower, well, it wouldn't be this one. But
You
why would
wouldn't
I
use
use,
that
I would
for-
only use this if what?
If you're talking about like something about the flour.
Only about the flour. Fantastic. Only if I was talking about the flour would I use a 1. Otherwise, you are so right. Give me it in a sentence.
The second
Alright,
ingredient,
Zena?
which is needed is milk.
Milk and cookies.
I love it. Milk and flour.
All right. Let's get another one in there, shall we, Jack? What's another good type of ingredient? What's the stuff that gets you all hopped up? A Mountain Dew. Not really. That gets you all hopped up. What's the good stuff that I love? Oh, well, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah. Shake a bake. But, I mean, what's the ingredient in a cookie that gets kids all hopped up?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 1 here, Jack.
No, you're gonna put a C.
I would only put a 1 if I was describing me.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let's talk about sugar. Who makes cookies in this class? Yeah, tell me about it, Klein.
You don't just use a white sugar, you also use brown. So you use cane sugar and brown sugar, so they're different types.
Let's get crazy.
I didn't know that.
So on this, that sounds like we're not going to need just 1. We're going to need what?
Sub.
2 types of sugar?
Yeah, well, they're
Right.
technically different ingredients, though. They're not.
Sugar?
Well, they are sugar, but they're different ingredients.
Let's break it down then, Clay.
Okay.
You
Explain. Oh.
will also need
2 types of sugar.
Yes. 2 types of sugar. Amazing. Now my audience supporting material is saying how, why, in what way, what types, Amanda, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, they may not, but maybe they are. So, Jackie, if I want to describe the sugar, what am I going to use?
Oh, what?
A 1. Fantastic. So we can say 1 type.
One type of sugar we will need is white cane sugar.
And now I'm going to describe the next type of sugar, Alex. So I'm going to put an A here.
No.
I would only use that if I wanted to go 1 step further and explain the.
Cane sugar.
Absolutely. But instead, I am going to put a, because it's another type of.
Sugar.
There you go. Okay. The other type is, everybody?
Brown sugar.
Oh, great. Brown sugar. Okay.
I just use cookie dough.
Right? Why are we making that? Okay, last but not least. Now, Abigail, you wanna give me the good stuff? Alex, why don't you give me the good stuff?
Chocolate chip.
There he is! Fantastic. So, we're going to do a 3 here.
A D.
Oh, okay. I guess it was. This is another type of ingredient. And we could say something fun about the chocolate chips. Because,
Yeah.
right? Let's say something exciting.
You could have a different, you could offer another like method, so instead of doing chocolate chips, take a block of chocolate and cut it up so you have different size pieces of chocolate instead.
Hold on. Yes. So we'll say something like, yes. Yay!
The last ingredient is a block of chocolate.
I don't know why I would do that, 'cause I don't need to, because nobody's there, but not least ingredient is the chocolate chip. I'm gonna put an exclamation point, so that we remember to say it with enthusiasm. Now, say when I describe something about these chocolate chips, like Charlie so greatly put, what symbol am I going to use to describe those chips?
A one.
Yes, perfect, a 1. So I could say something like, you can get creative and
Make star
shave
shapes.
block of chocolate into specialty sized chips. What if I want to say, or we could do another option? What symbol am I going to use, Ed?
A 2.
Yes, absolutely. What if I want to just talk about this small size of chocolate?
Then it's
Lowercase Roman
A.
oh.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Okay, so the 2, I would say you can also cruise to the store and get a bag of chips.
Chips.
Now I can explain it a little bit more, yeah.
So here's two things. First, what if I want to address both D and 1 in a point, essentially? Because, yeah,
Oh, like if I want to go further into this?
but also it's also referencing D, so it's, do you know? So it's can you do that? Or
Oh,
it's-
absolutely, because if you were saying the last but not least is the chocolate chip, and you only wanted to do 1?
No, you want to reference both. You want to basically be supporting, referencing both.
I would, like, if we didn't do the 2, I would simply say, you can buy a chunk of Belgian chocolate at the local Trader Joe's. Once you do that, go ahead and get this shaving tool. You can do it into this form or this form. These balls make better consistency. These are more likely to melt into a topping. If you can't get all that creative, don't worry. You can also go to the store and buy a bag of chips. Would that make sense? Is that what you're saying?
I think. Never mind.
Like I would develop it out here? Or do you mean like you would say the last but not least ingredient is the chocolate chip from a block of chocolate?
The chocolate chips. So last but not least is chocolate chips. Block chocolate and cheap pieces. I think I figured it out.
Okay. Let me know if you did it, because we can always come back to that if we want it. In the interest of time, I'm going to simply jump to the next idea. Well, let me actually set it up, because it would make lots of sense. I could say something like Hershey's chips are good. I'm going to say something like, my favorite bag of chips is Nestle semi-sweet chocolate. this make sense?
Yeah.
Some people would say, Amanda, but can you say that? Seems persuasive. To which I would say, I'm just telling you my favorite chip. I'm not telling you you have to do your favorite chip. I'm also not telling you that you have to buy this chip. I'm also not telling you that this is the best chocolate chip cookie, so it must be, you have to agree with that statement. I'm simply saying that this is my favorite. You can totally put your idea in that because it's not leaning us to believe that this is a good chocolate chip cookie. If you were saying that your idea was bad or wrong or moral or immoral, something like that, great. We don't want to give our opinion or our position on something. It's simply saying that this is my favorite. It's not saying that in that way. I like to use this one when I cook.
But doesn't that still like if you go to a more extreme example of like someone with a lot of like ethos, like very high of social figure, and then like my favorite is this, doesn't that still, even though they're just stating their favorite thing, it's still
100%. That
So
credibility
that's all
is
right?
going to buy into it 100%. The credibility of it all.
so that's
What are you
fine.
trying to?
That's not-
The entire speech being grounded and like trying to tell us that this is. If it was all about the chips, yes. The fact that it's an informative speech, that it's not designed necessarily to persuade, how we set it up and the conversation or the communication about it is going to be important. Also, how do I follow this claim up? When we make a statement, my favorite are Nestle chocolate chips. I like the consistency as well as the taste. Those are my personal things that I like the most about it, the consistency and the taste, and that's what makes it, for me, my favorite. Is somebody's natural credibility going to come through and have that persuasive element, potentially? Yeah, on any cooking show where they're like, this one happens to work better, that one happens to work like less better. I would choose this over this, simple preference. If the entire show becomes about making sure that you buy that product and that's what the message is, then okay. But when we were talking before, like rhetoric, the art of persuasion exists within all of our informative messages. We have to even, your introduction speech, it's persuading us that that is you, that these ideas are who you are, that you are what you say, that you have done these things, that you have experienced them. It's how we say it, it's how we create it, how we deliver it, yeah.
If you think it's a good rule that on an informative speech, if you can substitute my favorite with, for example, then it's perfectly fine to say it. Because you're just giving an example, I guess.
Yeah, again, it's not proof. It's not like I'm trying to prove something. I'm simply letting you know about ingredients. If I was trying to prove something, if I was making the claim, if you were going to make a chocolate chip cookie, it must be with the whatever. It must be with this because it is only going to be the one to eat and do. Then I would present you with evidence as to how that became true, how it breaks down, how it would be the perfect consistency for an individual. And then we'd follow it up with when a consistency exists in this way. And then I'd make sense to it. Like, I mean, the structure, I guess, of an argument is exponentially different than me saying, my favorite bag of chips is Nestle Toll chips. Or you can simply say, Nestle chips are also good. But then I would go in and say, do this. And I would say something like, don't take my word on the Nestle chips. No, don't take my word on the don't take only, there we go, my word on the Nestle chips. What do you think I'm going to do? Don't take only my word on these Nestle chips.
Reference.
This is the time where I could bring in some support. I could bring in an idea. I could explain what I'm talking about with these particular chips. This is how I could bring in some outside sources. So I could say something like, what would come next? What symbol would I be
The
using?
Forbes cookie list of 2018, cookie chip list of 2018 listed Nestle chips as blah blah blah. No? Oh, okay.
I was just asking what symbol to use.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know what symbol goes next, y'all. So if I'm supporting this idea, am I talking about a new idea for the chocolate chip, or am I going to talk about somebody else's word? I'm going to talk about somebody else's word that's building upon my word, so we would go indent, and it would be a
A little one.
Oh, wait.
Oh, 2 A's.
no, I'm sorry, yeah, there we are. I didn't know we went that far. Now we'll do a small a. And I would say something like, Rachel Ray, acclaimed chef, wrote in this month's Better Homes and Gardens magazine, in the article titled, "Which chip that Nestle Toll House chips cook and taste."
See, don't do the double A.
No, honey, you would only do the double, well, wait, where are we? D, 2, A, B, I, yes, we do. I'm sorry, we went that far.
Oh.
After we've done these
Okay.
A's, then you do the I, then the doubles.
So
And then-
after, sorry.
If you did another like indent off of the double A, would it just be 2?
Now we have to, now we would start to do an A1. Don't worry, it's not going to go that
Okay.
far.
Oh,
You're more than likely not going to go much further than the double. Again, it's a 5 to 7 minute speech.
Yeah.
And I think that we could say it more succinctly, is what
Right.
I would maybe tell you, if you were talking about this whole thing that long. We've talked a lot about chocolate chips here. Right,
It was fun.
obviously. Of course it is. Look at all these faces. I'm loving it.
Everybody's-
What have I done here, though? Look at your outlining example, y'all. So if you go back to your page 21, you are going to see on D that you are going to need to cite your sources inside your outline, out loud in your speech, and in a works cited page attached to the back of your outline. The first thing is citing it inside your outline. So what does citing it inside your outline mean? It means parenthetical representation. So parenthetical representation is a way that your Modern Language Association or the American Psychological Association, any of these writers have come up with a way that you can show who the author or who has written the work, who's responsible for it inside your writing. You all went over this in your first year seminar, yeah? But, okay, here comes the friendly reminder. MLA calls that if you have the information about the article or the work up front of the quote, the paraphrase, the summary, you don't need parenthetical representation on the back, except for your page number. Except for the page number. If there was, so what if I added up front? Let's look at that. Like it says on there, I have the author. I also have the author's title, acclaimed chef. The author's title in your speeches is more than likely going to be what's more important than the author's name. Making clear that title. Why? Because none of us know, we know Rachel Ray Standard, But specific researchers for you are going to have names that we may not be 100% familiar with. So you're going to want to make that title very clear to us so that we understand their credibility in what they're saying. The other thing that you're going to do is bring up a publication. So the publication, of course, like this, in this case, it's Better Homes and Gardens, but it's whatever vehicle by which that article came to you. Oftentimes, there won't be an author, and so in turn, the publication may be the credible thing to use. Does that make sense? And so then in turn, you can talk about the publication publishing this particular piece. Mehowever, let's think of it as well. We also have an article title on here. Not all sources have article titles. I mean, if you think about a movie even, or a podcast, but you can even think about something like a website. Websites rarely have article titles. Only things that will typically have article titles are journals, magazines, and newspapers. Journals, magazines, and newspapers will or should have authors, but oftentimes magazines and newspapers will not list those. If your magazine or newspaper doesn't have an author, go ahead and simply say a writer from the New York Times or a writer from the New York Post. Does that make sense? So you would say that instead. And then the last thing that we have on there is the date. And I said this months, which captures that. But when it comes time for persuasion, that number is going to be very important. Specifically if you are using statistics that are imperative and relevant to right now, or the growth of something, or that change. If we were doing something like cancer research, or if we were doing research for the coronavirus, right? You would not want to reference something from 2004, per se. However, for each of us, we're doing these informational speeches, and lots of our topics have been going on for long before them. That very much may take your references 10 years out, and that is okay, because we start to note from the context, from your topic, from what your purpose is, really where that research should be. So for each of you, the parenthetical representation is the first thing. If you can put as much detail as possible up front, you don't have to worry about anything on the end unless it has a page number with it. And again, that's usually just journals, magazines, newspapers. If I, however, wanted to reference this same Rachel Ray article later in my speech, do I need to repeat all of that information again? According to Rachel Ray, no, we don't want to. It will sound redundant anyways. But the way that you would do it is you would say something like, in the same article by Rachel Ray, or in the same Better Homes and Gardens article I referenced earlier, right? You can simply say it like that. However, when you write it, if you are giving a quotation, or if you're giving a direct testimony, or if you're citing it in some way, at the end, because it's the same one, so let's say this is our sentence, let's say this was our sentence, instead, I would go ahead and add in here, Ray 5. And now I've put the last name as well as the page number because I didn't have that criteria up front. Does that make sense? And now my audience or my reader knows that when they look at my works cited page, they want to go back and get this riveting piece of work about this chocolate chip, they know where to go and they can reference it and find it. But beyond that, we need to make sure that we are stating that information out loud for our audience to hear, to build their credibility, and then to also let them know when somebody else's words start and when they end. So for us, we are going to want to use the quote and end quote when you begin something. So Rachel Ray, acclaimed chef, wrote in this month's Better Homes and Gardens magazine an article titled, "It's Chip," because I had a question mark. See what I did? That, quote, Nestle Toll House chips cook and taste fantastic for stuff. I don't know what I finished there. End quote, period. Does that make sense? Now, what if we were summarizing something or paraphrasing? I'm not going to give a quote or an end quote, But what is another word instead of stated? You can even say something as simple as, to paraphrase. The idea that came across was, right? So how do we say it without? But we are still giving credit with the source when we paraphrase and when we summarize. Now, the only other thing that I want to tell you is that if we go back to page 21 and you're looking at the outlining handout, next to there you do have that parenthetical citation. The other thing down there is citing websites. Lots of you are going to maybe be having websites. Websites oftentimes will not have authors, they won't have dates, they won't have a lot of things. But what they will have is, the website, and they'll have some type of their credibility. So that is what you're going to need to do, is establish that credibility. If we said something like Nike.com, okay, we know what Nike is and we get it and what it's offering your speech. But many students or people will come and say, according to grv.com, they say that quote, and you're like, who's GRV? GRV.com, stands for blah, blah, blah. They are a leading expert in heart control, and they stated that, right? And now it contextualizes, it gives us some sense, it makes sense of what we are speaking about. Does that make sense to y'all? So we are going to need to hear these statements out loud. I'm going to need to hear these 5 parts. I want to hear the quote, the unquote, if that is what it takes. You are going to need to have at least 3 outside sources or different sources used in your speech to support your ideas. So continue to look for individuals of whom can support, who do say it better, who maybe have an interesting way of talking about it, who can describe or explain in a new and a unique way. Does this make sense to y'all, at least? The idea of supporting, what symbols to use, the indentation, that one idea supports the other, that you can break it down, that you can keep going further. How would you write a speaker's outline? Well, you keep the same exact format and structure, but you simply keep keywords and ideas. So something like, first let's look at the ingredients necessary to make a chocolate chip cookie. Specifically, you will need 4 ingredients. First ingredient you'll need is flour. Second ingredient you will need is milk. You also need 2 types of sugar. One type is white cane sugar, the other is brown sugar. The last, but not least, ingredient is the chocolate chips. Right? You can get creative and shave a block of chocolate into specific size chips. Fun. You can also cruise to the store and get a bag of chips. Hershey chips are good. Nestle chips are also Nestle chips, semi-sweet chocolate are also good. Don't take my word for it on the Nestle chips, though. Rachel Ray, an acclaimed chef, wrote in this month's Better Homes and Gardens magazine in an article titled, "Which chip?" that, quote, Nestle chips are by far the best to cook with and eat, end quote. So it would be something like, Ed, done enough for me today. Start us out, hon. Tell me the first main point. How you would say it if you were in the speech.
To start off, we're gonna need 4 ingredients.
That's right, we are. Jack!
The first ingredient would be, flour.
Yes.
The second ingredient is milk.
Ooh, amazing!
The third ingredient, which has 2 types, is sugar.
Cool.
There are 2 different types. 2 different types of sugar. Should I just explain each of those?
Yeah, do the first
Okay, yeah. So the first type of sugar you'll need is white cane sugar.
one. Ooh.
The second type of sugar is brown sugar.
Woo! Clay, there's an exclamation point.
Now, some might argue the most important, the chocolate chip.
There, ooh, I love it. Got dramatic. I'm into it.
You can get creative and get a big bar of chocolate to make into chocolate chips.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, we're so late.
Yeah.
No, I'm be like, Amanda, we gotta go. Listen, I love, look, we didn't even need to do anything. You could totally do that. Why? You didn't have to read it, you knew it. Listen, y'all, take your, you have that, the explanation of what's necessary for your skeleton. Your skeleton is only going to be your transition, I mean, you're going to write out the whole paper, but the only thing you're going to need to write there are your main points and your subpoints, and your, if you see it, on the example of what it wants. There's also, and what I'll do is I'll send y'all a little note, but you can read along. It is not difficult to find how you should do this if you're looking at your piece of paper. The skeleton is simply going to look like so. If you're seeing it, there's your 1, your 2, and your 1 and your 2 main points. That's pretty much all I need is an A and a B and a C and a D and your Roman numeral and your transition, and set it up. I'll send you a sample, maybe of somebody's from a former semester.
Would it be like a full page in like?
Yeah, maybe. Like, yeah, at most. It'll just look like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah, it won't be any more than 1 page, y'all. It shouldn't be any more than.
It's just like 3 main points.
However many points you have. You do not need to write an introduction, you don't need to write a conclusion, because you haven't learned that yet, but simply place the marking, so it'll say that in the directions, but otherwise, I think y'all got it. Go, create, have fun, think of those subpoints, main points, and thank you all for being so participatory, and at least being fun with some of the, nonsense of an outline. Thanks for your patience, y'all.
No, it's
Have a good weekend.